Okay, who am I talking to?
You are talking to Sverre Varvin from Norway. I'm from the Norwegian Psychoanalytic Association. And I think I was invited to the think tank because I, for so many years, have been working to try to understand how society and how the cultural field and how politics enter into the minds of people who are forced to flee from their country, who have experiences, wars, atrocities, and so on. And they are so aware that decisions made, for example, in Washington or in Moscow and so on, have direct influence on their life. Suddenly they have to leave. Some can have 10 minutes, take what they can bring, and then have to flee. Or they put in camps or whatever. I try to understand that. And I think I've been using then my psychoanalytic knowledge and my psychoanalytic competence in working in these fields all the time. And it has brought me more questions, more impossible situations to understand than I had from the beginning. At the same time that I think I understand more and more, and that I think that's what I can contribute with in this kind of think tank that Harriet Wolf has organized for psychoanalysts.
Well, because you're doing a lot of hands-on, right? Like you're actually working with people on the ground.
Yes.
And those people, for the most part, right now are war refugees. Not for the most part, but that's one of the populations you work for.
War refugees, and yes, I think you can say broadly war refugees, but it's also people who have been persecuted because of their ethnicity or religiousness and so on. Yeah.
And do you think then? So what you're talking about are the people who are the really the victims of intractable conflict,
Yes.
as opposed to the perpetrators, but they could go on to perpetrate if we don't help them. Is that sort of one of the ways you think?
Yes, I think very much, because we are helping to alleviate the enormous internal pressure and aggression that many feel because they have been treated so badly. And for some of them, this may turn into becoming aggressors given the situations. And often we call this identification with the aggressor, which is a very simplified way of looking at it. But some are seduced into becoming perpetrators, and some are forced. We have child soldiers from age of 5, 6, 7, 8, and they are trained, but they are not only trained, they are forced with really inhuman pressures and torture to kill others and sometimes kill their family.
Is there any getting over that?
Well, in a way, you never get over atrocities like that in a way. But the main thing is that you can gradually, with help, become more human again. You have to be humanized, because what they experience is extreme dehumanization. I mean, child soldiers is really a terrible situation of dehumanization. So what I think is that psychoanalysis and a psychoanalytic attitude is a profound humanizing approach. Really profound, because we know what needs for people who have lost all goodness inside, almost all goodness inside themselves. And then it's a process, of course, but it can happen over time. But also the meeting with people who are able to listen, to understand, short meetings can be of great help. That we know from also from our research.
Short meetings is so interesting. So in that way, are you talking about over time becoming a good object that they can interject, or are you asking, or are you trying to help them refine the good object within? Like what would be the task there?
I think that the main thing is the last that you say, to refine, to reactivate good objects. But this reactivation can, I think, only happen in an interaction with another person who is able to see, to listen, to understand, and to bring some understanding, not like a psychoanalytic interpretation, but it's a different kind of intervention, also kind of doing physical things and so on, but activate something good inside.
So what would be a kind of an intervention, Sverre? Like if it's not a verbal intervention so much, you know, sort of maybe something more nonverbal or tonal or facial. Like what, can you help me understand what you mean?
Well, I think it's a combination of the tonal, the verbal, and the way you are being, but it's also how you organize things. One example is from the Balkans, where there are, I collaborate with a team, and they have what they call mobile teams. They go to the borders, they go to the parks where the young refugees are, and there is a nurse with a bag with medicines, with bandages. There is an interpreter, and there is a psychologist. So they come with sore feet. Many have walked for days. They have toothache, they have infections. They get some help with this, and they get the opportunity to talk with a psychoanalytically trained psychologist. These can be short interventions, but I've participated, and I know it activating something good. I talked with some young Afghan boys who had been working, traveling through Iran, Pakistan, and so on from, and they were really on alert. And then I said, how is your contact with your parents? Do you have contact with your parents? They hadn't because their mobile phones were taken by the border guards. But when we talked about the parents, they started to cry. In these moments, I think they experience somebody understand the terrible situation they are in. So that's just a small example of what that this type of intervention can be, even if they are very short, it can activate something good in their mind.
And begin the process of processing, of mourning, or of just rehumanizing.
Rehumanizing, yes.
Yeah.
And when they are on the flight, it's they have to fight all the time to get through. But afterwards, then this can be a very important experience that can be reactivated in their therapy. They can remember there were some good people there, and that is what I have also experienced many times doing longer-term psychotherapy with these people. They remember the good moments. They remember the good meetings, even if they were on flight where everything was terrible. So I think this is something that it's remembered in their mind and in their body.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying, because you're talking about this very psychoanalytic way of thinking about what it means to be a person in the world.
Yes.
And then to find ways of midwifing that, like helping them to be a person again, because of the way you're listening, but because of your own being in contact with your own good and bad objects, and not disavowing that. And yeah. Okay, well, this is a wonderful sort of initiative. What are some of the other initiatives that you're doing at this time?
Well, at the time, as we are doing a lot of research, interviewing people who are on their way flying, but also when they come to reception centers. We are doing long-term follow-up of people who have been in therapy and so on. I think that our psychotherapeutic work is maybe one of the more important things, because this is the psychoanalytic way of doing psychotherapy, which had to be modified from classical analysis, of course, but it is very important because the way of listening that is a psychoanalyst is able to do is kind of unique in relation to all these other types of therapies that are on the market now, which are very much kind of technical approaches. So I think that to stimulate clinicians to be able to be with persons who have been severely traumatized, and to be able to listen and to contain without trying to modify what has happened, to change what has happened, and so on. This is really important in the short term and in the long term. And I think we all have data enough from our research to show that this is important.
Where are you drawing inspiration from? Are you drawing inspiration from post-war Germany or like China? Like where are you looking to find models of this, or are you just inventing on the fly?
Well, it's from many sources, of course. I am a post-war person from Norway, and the country was occupied by the Germans and so on. My father was in the army or in the navy, and so it has been a part of the family that bad things happened during the war. My father worked with the war sailors, and they were treated very badly after the war. Many became quite ill, alcoholized, families dissolved, problems, and they were what you call it when you sleep on the street.
Homeless.
Yeah, they were homeless, and they were part of the milieu where I was a boy. They were all around me, so we talked to them and so on, and afterwards I understood that they were homeless war sailors. They had really experienced extreme atrocities serving the needs of the country. And this was one inspiration for me. And then I started to read a lot about what happened to them, and the follow-up also of people who had been in concentration camps and so on. And I got in contact with both concentration camp survivors and researchers who had been doing this. And it's I think I was struggling a lot to find out where are the models. And then one very important inspiration for me was, I really understood this from an object relational point of view. One phrase that was come from Dori Laub, he said that these atrocities, they are severing, they are destroying the internal bond to an empathic other. And this, I suddenly understood what was happening to many of my patients, and what was needed for them to try to re-establish this bond and to re-find internal good objects. Because everyone has had some good experience from the early childhood. And if they totally lose this connection with internal good object, I think people die. That's what happened with they call them Muslims in the concentration camps. Everybody could see that they were dying. And see in research that there is from follow-up from both the war sailors, concentration camps survivors, that there's a higher frequency of really bad illness, but also early death. So in my mind, to put it very simple, I think that it is life-saving when people are getting in contact with good internal and empathic object. Because without that we cannot live. That's libido, that's what serves our body and our mind and our ability to relate to others. I am from Norway, grew up in Norway. My mother came from Iceland, and she was came to Norway because of the war. And then from very early on, I decided to become a psychiatrist and a psychoanalyst. So I then got my training in Oslo and the Norwegian Psychoanalytic Society, and I started quite early to work with exiled persons, the refugees, and so on. And this has been a main focus in my work for much more than 30 years. And then, of course, this brought my mind to try to understand how societal events, political conflicts, and these intractable conflicts, how they influence the mind and the relations of people, the ability to be in relations.